Okay, so thank you. I'm going to share with you some highlights from a study that I'm doing as part of my PhD, which is basically looking at the ethical issues in molecular epidemiology with a specific focus on phylogenetics. I'm with the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So we have really learned a lot from phylogenetics, and this is really a powerful tool for us to understand HIV transmission dynamics. We have actually learned a lot in terms of how it moved from the chimpanzees and how it was transferred to human beings. This is all the work of HIV phylogenetics. It's basically a data-intensive technique which involves the analysis of HIV genetic sequences. And most of these sequences actually stored, in public repositories, for example, in GeneBank. And there's a lot of data sharing that is involved. And I'm going to talk about the ethical issues that arise. So in terms of the sources of the data, it basically comes from drug resistance testing as well as HIV surveillance data. We also have specific studies that are actually dedicated to HIV phylogenetics. And we do have a lot of ethical issues that can actually arise from all these issues. Okay. So we conducted a literature review as well as in-depth interviews with scientists from different disciplines, some of whom are actually here to understand what they regarded as the key ethical issues that are involved or associated with HIV phylogenetic data and this analysis in different research studies. So one of the key issues that was raised was that it actually leads to unintentional disclosure of HIV status. For example, it can also lead to the identification of individuals and even groups as sources of HIV transmission. And this has consequences, which I'm going to be talking about. One of the issues that was raised was actually the social and emotional impact in terms of harm to human beings. One of the issues is actually stigma and discrimination that can actually come out when you're associated with being a transmitter of HIV. The issue of criminalization of HIV, as you might be aware, there are actually about 72 countries which have specific laws that criminalize HIV. And it's possible that some of the data from some of the studies can actually be used as evidence in court cases. And this has actually been happening in previous cases. HIV acquisition, think of a couple that is involved, a discordant couple that is involved in phylogenetic studies, and it's discovered that the source of the infection is actually coming from a third person who is not part of the, who is not like a couple, and what really happens to the trust in the marriage. We have seen issues to do with human rights abuses in certain governments. We see it in the news. And it's possible that the data can actually be used to persecute key populations. Talk of men who have sex with men, commercial sex workers, injection drug users. All those can actually be affected. And what does that do to the human beings in terms of their behavior? They can actually lose trust in research. They can actually lose trust in the health system itself, running away even from HIV testing and even programs that are related to that. So these are actually keys to do with trust in the health system. So the issue of data sharing, while it is very good in terms of maximizing the benefits of the data, it also has serious issues to do with governance. What happens in terms of downstream use of the data for secondary users, issues to do with informed consent, issues to do with data security, issues to do with access. All these issues also need to be explored. The concept of phylogenetics itself is quite difficult. And how do we make sure that everybody who is involved, all the stakeholders, for example, the community members, even health services workers, are actually at the same level to understand even the risks, the benefits, and also what the technique can actually do so that you're at the same level and appreciating. So this is a paper that we published as part of the work in sometime at the beginning of the year, actually highlighting some of these issues that I have been highlighting earlier on. The slides are talking slow now. Just to acknowledge my two supervisors, Professor Doug Vasena, who is here, as well as Professor Tulio, who actually guided me through to where I am now, and also to acknowledge the funding that we got from the Wellcome Trust. I thank you.